everybody smile, only when they want to turn the cameras that way. And hello, everybody. We're on. It's time for us to take a look at what's going to happen in FA255, Understanding Movies, the American Cinema. So let's just go ahead and get started to find out what is required. So, first of all, you want to know who I am. Okay, my name is Lucanio. You will find me over in Building 17. That's the Forum Building in room 208. My office hours, as you see there, are Tuesdays. I'm only on campus one day a week. Tuesday mornings, 9:30 to 10:30, but if we find out it's impossible for whatever reason for you to see me, and you just absolutely have to see me, we can find another time that works for both of us. Okay, something about me. I have studied motion pictures and old-time media for a long, long time. And I've written a few books on the subject. My specialty has always been 1940s and 1950s Hollywood history. And the specialty within the specialty has been dealing with science fiction movies of that era. Science fiction and the horror movies. There's a few of the book titles that I've written. I was also in a movie called Monsters from the Id, in which I was one of those talking heads and, you know, just feed you all this stuff about how great these movies are and blah, blah. And it went nowhere. That's the latest thing I've written. I've been concentrating recently on 1950s television, and particularly of the science fiction variety on that. So I wrote chapters in those two books that are still out, that are still in print. And I am also the editor of a newsletter, which is more like a magazine. It says a 16-page newsletter called Radiogram, which is the publication of the Los Angeles-based SPURDVAC is what it's called. That's the Society to Preserve and Encourage Radio, Drama, Variety, and Comedy. It's old-time radio stuff. And that's also part of my interest because of that era that I studied, the 40s and the 50s. So it included examining what was going on with radio, because Hollywood was very much involved in radio. And as such, if you read the newspaper or understand all of the arts that goes on in Eugene, I am part of the Radio Redux organization, in which we recreate radio shows for the public at the Holt Center. We just finished this weekend, yesterday, a matinee performance of two comedy shows. We did The Secret Life of Walter Mitty and A Damon Runyon Story. Our next one is November 4th and 5th. We are doing Alice in Wonderland. And what I do with it is I do what I'm doing here. I talk, okay? I do a pre-show lecture discussion about what this show is all about. And for this one, I will be talking an awful lot about Disney and Disney's version, because that is the version that we are doing, was the Lux Radio Theater broadcast of the Disney film. So anyway, that's a plug for that, but that's what I do. And what I do is I love that. That's the best part of my job, is to be able to study all of this stuff, and I just get really involved in it. And so anyway, there's that. So let's get out of there and talk about what else that we need to know for this class. One of the things that we need to know is don't call me. The best way to get in touch with me is through email, and I want to emphasize that because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm only on campus one day a week. And if you call me at 10:30, I probably won't answer the phone because I'm on my way out the door. And then you leave a message, and I won't get that message until a week later, and then I'll call you back, and you're not home either, and all that kind of stuff. I gave you two email addresses. You'll see it in the syllabus. And so I check both of those emails. I check them all day long, every day. So that's the best way if you have to get in touch with me, is to use email. So let me emphasize that. You will use email. You will use email. You will use email. You will. You sleep on that tonight so that we'll be able to stay in touch. Okay, the book. The book that goes with this class is called American Cinema, American Culture by John Belton. It is a good book for introductory information about Hollywood film. There is the sample there on the screen is the second edition. I emphasize this again. You do not need the up-to-date, most recent edition that means you have to go mortgage your house to get the copy of that book. Any edition will work. So if you have access to the first edition, it's going to work for you. The only difference, as I mentioned to you in the studio here, and I now mention over the air, the only difference is in the newer versions, they just talk about newer films, but the concepts, the notions, the ideas behind what film is, those don't change. So there isn't that much difference there with regard to what you would need for the exams. So that's really the only difference. So if you can find a copy of this book, the first edition, you're in really pretty good shape. Okay, moving on. What is this course? How does it work? Well, let's take a look first about what you'll find within this course. It is an introductory course that brings Hollywood filmmaking into clear focus as, first, an art form. Okay, that's why you're in college. You already know that. That's the default. You walk through the door, you know the language, you know everything. What it means is, oh, of course, film is art, okay? So keep that in mind and you're fine. It's also an economic force. And what I always tell every one of my film students, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, and in every film course I've ever done, I always mention this. In Hollywood film, it is a business first. That's the bottom line. It is a business. Those people in Hollywood, never mind what they tell you, never mind how they boast, those people in Hollywood will tell you and emphasize that it is art. But the bottom line is it makes money. And it won't be made unless it makes money. All right? So it's also very much an economic force. It also raises the question then, did I just cancel that out and say that Hollywood film is not an art form? No. What I'm saying is the motives behind the production of a movie in Hollywood is money, big money. But yes, those kinds of things can be art forms. They can have very qualified people who tell stories visually, and as we look at those films, we see something in them that says, this is better, or this is more than just something that is usual, is every day. There's something about it. It resonates with a quality that causes us to talk about it. And then we're talking about art. We're talking about aesthetic value at that point. So yes, their motive to make the film was money. And they want to make lots of money. But that doesn't automatically cancel out any aesthetic value that's associated with it. And I have seen thousands of films. And I can tell you that looking at a lot of films, some of the cheapest movies have offered more aesthetic value than bazillion-dollar blockbusters. And we all know that bazillion-dollar blockbusters often fall flat on their face with regard to everybody. And we always think back, you know, the one that Disney made, a couple of years ago, oh boy, The Lone Ranger. How that one was such a success. The guy with the bird in his head, on his head. Okay, and lastly, a system of representation and communication. What that means is, yes, it's a system of producing things that represents who we are as a culture, and it is also a system that communicates to us. It gives us ideas. It gives us notions of aesthetic value on the one hand, and on the other hand, it also gives us rhetorical information. At times, meaning, of course, that what it does is trying to convince us of something. It's trying to convince us that we're all wrong in the way we look at the world, or it's trying to convince us that the way we've been looking at the world is fine, just fine. That goes back and forth. That goes back and forth. So that's what we are looking at. That is this series tells us about Hollywood. Also, the American cinema probes the deeper meanings of American movies with regard to, and this is their term, I hate it, but I use their term, the hidden message of genres. Now, we all know what a genre is. The genre is the Western, the detective story, horror movies, science fiction movies, that sort of thing. And they always like to point out that why do we watch those movies? Because there are hidden messages, and don't get too excited about that. The social and psychological effects of style. You know, the style of a film, how does that affect us? With regard, you know, I once saw a film that it was so disgusting, and that's coming from me, that's a disgusting person to begin with. But when I looked out there and I saw this movie, I just thought, I can't take this anymore, because what was the style? The style was, let's go kill women. That was pretty much what this movie was all about. It was one of those unbelievably bad horror, slasher, gory movies, but the whole point of view was from the killer's point of view, chasing a woman, and we got to see the terror, the horror, the fright, the fear, the pain, the suffering in a woman's face. That was primarily what that movie was all about. It just simply glorified, what? Let's go kill women. That's essentially what that movie was. It was so bad, I walked out. And of course, it was so gruesome, I got sick anyway, so I had to walk out. But I kept thinking, see, there is the psychological effects of style right there. In the hands of a better filmmaker, perhaps, or I'm talking too much here. I'm already giving you a lecture here, but I shouldn't. But if we stop and just stop for a moment and think, what would the difference be if we reversed that? If we reversed it and had the point of view from the victim, what would that tell us? I don't know. But I mean, that's just the question that we would ask here with regard to the social and psychological effects of style. The mutual influence of society and popular culture. This is the famous question. I mean, we can boil that one down to the simple one of, you know, does a movie make you go out and kill people? You know, all the violence, all that kind of stuff. Does that work on you? So, okay, I'm done. Now I go out and I machine gun people. Or is it just reflecting what our society is all about because there are people that go out and machine gun people? Okay, what is it? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? The answer to that is yes. The answer to that is they are both responsible. We have a culture that can be violent. We have a culture where people can be violent. We have a culture in which that kind of stuff is just part of their existence. But we see movies that could excite those kinds of people. But that's up to not us to determine. That's up for sociologists. It's up for other people who are more skilled at such things as psychology and that sort of thing. But it does. It goes back and forth because films are a product of our culture. We produce motion pictures. Okay, moving on. This is how it works. Each week you get a 60-minute lesson. That's your lecture as such. You will like it because they are documentary films. There's nobody standing up there just talking about stuff. They are documentary films with interviews with real filmmakers and some critics and so forth. And you get to see lots of scenes from some great movies. It is cable cast 5 times. If you don't have cable, that's fine because you can watch these anytime at all on the internet. Now that address there, that learner.org, that address is in your syllabus, and you can pull that up, and that takes you to the Annenberg site, and every one of the films are there. So you know, you can watch all of these, all the films in 1 week if you want to, if you have the time. So you're really not limited just to what's going on the cable system. You're in control. You can go on the internet and find these films. Okay, the next time I talk to you will be the midterm review, which is October 24th. It'll be in this room, 6 to 6:30. You can be here in person if you want to. If not, you can watch it on television. It will be on the cable system. It is also streamed live, so that is in your syllabus as well. So you can stay home, turn your computer on, and see it that way. So you don't have to to be here in person. It's fine if you want to, but you're not required. Then it's midterm time. And what I do is I give you, it's like all movies, it's 1 week only. It's going to be there for 1 week only. So it starts October 27th and it runs through November 3rd, but it is in the testing center. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But the testing center is where you will take the exam. And then I'll talk to you again for the final review. That's November 28th. Again, the same applies. You don't have to be here. And then your final exam, December 1st through December 8th in the testing center. And the testing center, I'll talk about in a moment. The big question is, okay, so you told me the schedule. What do I have to do? Well, I have a good idea now. You just want me to take a bunch of tests. Well, that's true. But we also want you to watch the video programs. That's a requirement because a lot of what you're going to be tested on comes from those videos, okay? And we want you, oh, there's that learner thing again. I just want to remind you of that you can do that from your computer, okay? And then read appropriate sections of the textbook, and that is outlined in the syllabus as well. The chapters that correspond to what the videos are all about. And if you don't have a super brain, take notes. Because once again, these are like lectures, and if you are a movie nut, if you're a film buff, and you're going through it and you go, wow, I know that stuff, man. I read those crazy magazines. I know everything about movies. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't know about that. Well, jot it down because he might ask me that question. So take notes if you have to. And the course requirements, well, I've already told the people here that are in the studio, but there is the Moodle check-in. You do it this week, and this is to meet the requirements of the college itself. I have to know that you are serious about this course and you are remaining in the course. Otherwise, I drop you, and you don't want that to happen. You want to drop yourself. You don't want me to drop you. And I have to know that you're serious about staying in the course, so you go to the Moodle check-in. You'll see it on the front page. And all it is, again, is I just ask you a question about what your favorite film is and why, and you don't have to write me a paper. All you do is just say, my favorite movie is this one, and I like it because the music is wonderful. That's all you have to say. Or it says, I like this movie because I like this actor, and this actor is super, and everything he does, I just get a thrill up my leg when I see him doing this, that sort of thing. So that's fine. That's okay. That's all you got to do. Also, 2 exams, all right? I've already mentioned that. Midterm and final. I gave you the dates. You'll see that in the syllabus. The exams, both of them are going to be similar. There will be 50 questions. They are multiple choice. There is no writing a paper as such in this class. It is simply multiple choice. So when you take the exam in the testing center, it will ask you, blah, 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 and you have 5 choices. You know how to do that, I think. But anyway, that's all it's going to involve. Okay, the testing lab is over in the center building 311, so it's a computer exam. I give you the 5 days in there so that they have plenty of time for you to come in. Now, I used to have to do this because I used to have like 75, 80 students in this class, and they were lined up around the block at the end of that 5 days to take the test. They can't handle all of that. So anyway, you have all of that time to get in there to take that exam, and you need to follow their rules, okay? They're not going to bend the rules for you. You need to follow the rules, and that means, go on their website, look at what is required. Basically, you have to bring photo ID and your L number, and the best way is always to go on that website and check their hours of operation. So you don't want to go there and say, I'm here to take that test, and you arrive at 5 minutes to 5 and they close at 5 o'clock. They're not going to let you take the test. and then you'll scream and have all kinds of things and yell at me and that sort of thing. And I won't talk to you, of course. I see you on the street, I will cross the street, I will avoid you. So we don't want that to happen, all right? Let me emphasize that also because I've had problems, or they have had problems, and they tell me about this stuff. Turn off all cell phones, all electronics, and place them in backpacks or check them with the staff. And all belongings, including backpacks, hats, and coats, will be placed inside provided cubicles. Because I had this, they went nuts over there. Was it last year? I can't remember, because some guy came in with his hat, and they said, "You can't have your hat. You got to take your hat off." And the guy went ballistic because he never takes his hat off. And they said, "Sorry, part of the rules are," "I don't care," you know, and he went nuts. And don't do that. Okay. Now, what I do allow, and if I were doing this, and if I had the capability of all of this, I would let you use all of your notes, because a good scholar takes notes. A good scholar has his notes handy so that he can always check on things. But they can't do that. But what they do offer over there is that you can carry with you one 3x5 card for reference. So when it's time for the exam, as I always state, I pretty much tell students that the stuff you know, don't sweat it. The stuff that just comes easy to you, don't bother with it. But if it's some concept in there that confuses you, that's the thing you put on the card. And if you're a born loser, it could very easily be you spent up all night long putting that kind of stuff on the card, and you get to the test and there's not a single question about that. And of course, there's always then when you don't take the card with you and you didn't put that stuff on there, every question is relative to it. So I just say, okay, bring that card with you. That's for the stuff that you are confused about. It's not the stuff that you don't know. It's just stuff that might be confusing, like the example I gave there, because you might have, I don't know what you mean by aspect ratio. I have no idea what you mean by the size of the screen. What is this, 255 or 235 and all that kind of stuff? Well, write it down. So you say, okay, now I get it. I get it now. I know what pan and scan is and why it was a crappy thing and why it ruined the aesthetics of a movie. All right. You are responsible for your exam, not me. So if you don't make the exam, it's not my fault. It's your fault. It's that simple. And always check their website for those hours of availability, because that is absolutely crucial. Because again, don't go over there, because I know some of you are procrastinators, and I know some of you would wait for that last minute, and you go over there and you realize, oh my gosh, they're closed. I came here to take the test and they closed early that day. And that is true on the final exam. I can guarantee you on that. The final exam, they close early on final exam week, so and on that Thursday. So don't put it off. Do it ahead of time. Okay. On Moodle, I will also give you a study guide. So at about a week, the week of our exam review, I will have on there a study guide that will give you some information about the test. Okay, I also offer extra credit, and there's two ways you can do it. You can write a paper on production elements of a single sequence of any film produced before 1970. Yeah, I push you. Because if I left it to you, everything would be brand new, and that wouldn't tell me anything. But if I know you were watching a movie, if you were forced to look at something, and some of you got your eyeballs this big, and I am telling you also, I could be even worse. I could really force you to sit and write a extra credit on a black and white movie. I look around when I say that, and I see the film people, because the film people go, what's wrong with that? That's fine. So anyway, before 1970, it's explained in the syllabus. Or if you are so inclined, produce your own narrative or documentary production that is also explained in the syllabus. So if you're a film person who is making films, studying how to do things like that, you can show off for this class too. The details of what we are doing in this class are in that deluxe syllabus, and it's available on Moodle for downloading, or there are some here, I don't know, maybe they've all been picked up. But anyway, read it. That's the important thing, is read that syllabus, because it gives you everything. You can't ignore one part of that syllabus that I just discovered, and I said it's winter. It's not fall. I was ahead of myself. It's not winter, it's fall term. But that's on the dates. I gave you a little calendar of special dates, and it says across there, it says winter 2016. Okay, now, if you are confused, bewildered, rattled, depressed, and desperate, so am I. So stop by during office hours or send me an email, and we'll try to get things straight. All right? Now, this is the schedule. This is what you're going to enjoy. The first film is called The Classic Hollywood Style. What they talk about in there is a style that originated with Hollywood, and classic does not mean old. Classic in this sense is a certain way of doing things. It's like as in classicism. And so that's the first one. Then they move over to that wonderful thing called the studio system, which is how the studios began to control film and control people. And those people became the star. And once the star is out there, they began to dictate things to the studios. Once you become famous, you know, you can always say, hey, I can always go to these guys over here because, you know, I get a better deal. Then you move to genre. The first genre is one that is very much American. It's the Western. So what is the Western all about? Why did we make Westerns? Why did people love them? And the big question is, why did we just go nuts over those until the late 1960s? And in the 1960s, nobody went to Westerns. Different group. The romantic comedy, also sometimes called the screwball comedy. So what makes people laugh? The combat film, everybody else in the universe refers to it as the war movie, but they call it the combat film, and it's an interesting take on it. You know, why did we make combat films? And the difference in combat films made in World War I, combat films made in World War II, or post-World War II as well, in the 1950s, and then you get to Vietnam, and combat films change. And then we go through everybody's favorite film genre, film noir, black film. It's dark film. They called it that because everywhere you go, it's always night, and there's always ring, slick streets, and all of that. And the big question in the film noir is it just a style of movie making, or is it really a genre? Because if you go by the way they talk about film noir and why we like it, you can apply that to Citizen Kane. And yet we don't think of Citizen Kane as a film noir. And film in the television age, my subject, my favorite area to talk about what happens, and primarily what happens there is big competition from television, but also it is great technological change. That's when we get a lot of technology that comes in, and they promote it because they want to get people out of the home. The film school generation, people go to school to study films, and lastly, the edge of Hollywood, which brings it all to date. There are my 2 email addresses. Remember, you're responsible, and also that's it, the end. Thanks, and we'll enjoy the movie. Bye.